4, you're with Anastasia and Warren, Joy Drive. Hey, I was hanging out with my mama this morning. I took her shopping and we drove past her local church that she loves. Like, Mum loves her Greek church. She goes every Sunday. And she hasn't been able to go to church for the last, 4 or 5 months.
Go.
And she watches Mass on Sunday mornings and she was just telling me it's not the same. And I said, of course it's not the same. It's the whole thing about unity and going to church and being amongst your fellow peers. And then I was kind of thinking about funerals as well and thinking, oh my God, the impact of what would be going on if someone passes away. How many people can go to a funeral? Is it going to be live streamed? And then I thought, actually, we used to have a newsreader here, Bronte, and
Yes.
I remembered that he's a funeral celebrant and a marriage celebrant, and I thought, well, he'd know about the new restrictions, COVID restrictions. In fact, he wrote a piece on it very recently, so I thought we'd get him in. So, Bronte, are you there, darling?
Anastasia, Warren, howdy, how you going?
How are you, Bronte?
I'm very well, Warren, thank you. Thanks for asking.
How are you really, though, considering what's been going on with the new restrictions?
So my hubby Clint and I have been, well, I've always worked from home, but he's been working from home now for pretty much 6 months, and he's kind of over it, except that we know that it's going to be here for the foreseeable future. And so we go to work. We go to work in separate offices, separated in our home, separated by a wall, and we have lunch together and all that sort of stuff. But it's really different. And I know that he's missing the social contact. I am too, really, and I feel really sad for people who, couples who had booked weddings, for example, and have some of it now had to postpone a couple of times because they haven't pushed it out far enough, and funerals have been really difficult, I think, for those who are grieving people they've lost as well. That's been really, really hard. But
weddings we can't do at the moment, can we, Bronte?
From midnight tonight in Melbourne, in Metro Melbourne, Warren, we can't.
Right.
They're banned except unless there are compassionate reasons. And it's interesting because births, deaths, marriages, the registry is usually the governing body for births and deaths and marriages, obviously. And with the stage 4 restrictions, those responsibilities fall to DHHS. And so we have no clarification yet from DHHS about what those compassionate grounds for having a wedding might be.
Right.
So we've sought clarification from them, and I'm sure it's a piece of work in progress.
Have you had any? Have you had to do in these times a funeral? Any experiences there?
Yeah, there was one. I married a couple of guys 2.5 years ago, and we knew at the time that one of them was dying. And recently, he did die, and The beautiful thing was that in those 2 years, we planned his funeral exactly how he wanted it, and he got to have input into that funeral, except that then the stage 3 restrictions came in, and it meant that instead of having, say, 100 people at his funeral, we had 10 socially distanced. The good thing coming out of that was live streaming, and so we had 100 households live streamed into his funeral ceremony. And so it was very much the same ceremony, but it was just, it was more than socially distanced. It was live streamed. And so the grieving...
it adds to the grief.
It does. It adds to the grief level. And then, you try and tell a family that they can't hug outside as he's being taken to be cremated, and it's gut-wrenching. It's really hard.
What? This makes me really angry. That's what comes up for me when you say that. It makes me really angry that people cannot hug and unite through the loss of someone's life. It makes me so angry.
Well, it delays, I think it slows down their dealing with the grief.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And in a way, they feel robbed, and in some ways...
Well, they are robbed.
Well, they are. And in some ways, people who have lost loved ones are doing similar things to what people who are getting married are doing, and that is they're going to have the wake, because you can't have a wake at the moment. They're going to have the wake down the track when they can invite that 100 people to a party. Just like, it's going to be a long time, I think, before we have weddings of the ilk of 100, 150, 250 people, and so couples are starting to think about, well, maybe we just get married.
Yeah.
And some couples have been quite funny in that they've said, this is the best thing since sliced bread because we don't have to invite people we don't want to be there, and we can blame the government.
They can save a fortune.
Yeah.
Oh, completely can.
Are you finding, Bronte, with the funerals, though, people are understanding of the reasons why they can only have 10?
Yeah, they are. They are, and they accept it to a certain extent, but it doesn't take away the depth of grief.
Of course.
And I think it delays the fact that they will feel, as Anastasia said, there's another layer on top, and they feel somewhat robbed, I think.
Because Bronte, I'd feel robbed. Like if I passed away any minute, I'd feel so robbed because I'm such an attention seeker, and I've always had the fantasy of people wailing and screaming at my funeral, and like gut wrenched. So I've always seen it as a celebration. And poor Anastasia, please don't leave us. So I don't want to die right now. Let's put it that way. It doesn't suit me.
Let's not do that.
It's not the best time.
Yeah. So it's been interesting in that the number of inquiries, particularly for weddings, has maintained for me. So I'm still getting about an inquiry every 24 hours, and they're from not only Victoria but also overseas, and lots of LGBTIQ couples, obviously, and they're all quite okay, thank you, about just having a legals only wedding. That's what they want.
Yeah.
And as one of you said, it's a chance to save a heap of money as well, and think about maybe spending that on a holiday rather than not a wedding.
The Greeks would be wrapped in the Italians because they go hard. They invite everybody, and they do it because they have to. Like, we must invite Uncle John, even though we haven't seen him. And look, Uncle Tony will get upset if Uncle John isn't there. So, there is a silver lining in it all, I guess.
It builds and builds. Yeah, that's right. So that's wedding kind of restrictions under COVID. We moved to stage 4 for weddings tonight at 11:59 p.m. and weddings in Melbourne banned for the next 6 weeks from that time, and for the rest of all the shires outside Greater Melbourne, they moved to stage 3, and that simply says that weddings can have a maximum of 5 people, including the celebrant and the 2 witnesses and the couple. That's it.
So, Bronte, can people cram in a wedding before midnight tonight? Like, what if you get a wave of inquiries now, people listening to this thinking, right, let's get married tonight? Yeah,
that's so the legal aspects still have to be adhered to on. So you have to have a notice of intended marriage that was lodged at least on the 5th of July,
so it's too late
in order to get through. And so you can't get around that. And I had an inquiry this afternoon saying, can we have just a legals only wedding in the next 6 weeks? And I said, well, no, not in Melbourne you can't. In regional Victoria you can. But, there's no shortcuts.
Yeah,
you have to
unfortunately.
stick to what's legally required. Yep.
Well, that's the next 6 weeks for us, and hopefully it will change by then.
We all, I think, are waiting with bated breath just to, as I'm sure is the Premier and the Chief Health Officer, just to make sure that those numbers do come down, that the curve, lowers again, flattens out, and we'll all be in a better place.